July, so wanted to show you how my little experimental backyard mainly herb garden is going so far. Hello world, good morning. It's about 7 a.m. here in the great state of Texas, and already really humid, about 85 degrees outside, so it already starts out really hot in the morning. I'm doing this because it gets so hot. I think it's supposed to be 100 degrees again today. We've had at least the past 3 days at 100-degree temperatures. Feels like 110. So had to get out early in the morning to give you a little backyard herb garden update. It's July and it's time to show you how my gardening experiment is going. If you haven't seen any of my past videos, my name is Mickey. I live in the great state of Texas with my dog Buckshot, and I'm on a homestead journey. This little garden experiment here has been giving me the opportunity to learn some of the skills of homesteading without having to have property. As you may or may not already know, I don't have land yet for a proper homestead. Of course, these days people call things like urban homesteads and modern homesteads, homesteading in the community, an option. So that's not really what I'm after. I'm looking to buy some property and start a homestead, like you may have seen back in the old westerns, where you're self-sufficient and raising animals and growing your own food on a piece of land and developing it, making it a beautiful, wonderful place. So let me show you the garden. So this is my cosmos. It's been interesting growing cosmos from seed. You can see how tall it is. And I've learned a lot from growing this in this little pot. I don't know that it's really root bound because it's doing really well. But everything is kind of back and forth with the watering, both in painted pots and in the terracotta clay pots. It is really a challenge to try to get watering just right in the terracotta clay pots, as you can see from my mint over here. The mint with 100-degree heat, I have to water it so much, but now I think I'm over watering it. You can see the leaves are yellowing. They're not drying out and they've got spots on them, so I think really I'm kind of over watering at this point. I'm going to let it go a day, even though it looks really saggy during the heat of the day. I'm going to go ahead and let it dry out a little bit. This is what I'm most proud of here. This is my thyme. I grew this thyme from seed, and it's really hard to grow thyme from seed. They're such tiny little seeds. It's been a real challenge, but it's doing really well. I have about 5 or 6 of them. I've got one down here. Show you down here. There's a little one right there. And then I have some others here that I've planted in pots. This one is just taken off. It's crazy how big this one has gotten in such a short time. But it's doing wonderful. It's in this painted pot, and I don't have to really water this one too much. It's really taken off, and it's not a whole lot of work. This is a bachelor button, and you can see how beautiful this little blue flower is going to be. I cannot wait for them to bloom. I have several of them. This is the only one that's really doing well and growing tall, and ironically it also is in one of these terracotta pots, so it has been a bit of a challenge as well, but it's doing great. Can't wait for it to bloom. I've got plenty of parsley I have about 6 parsley over here, and I don't water it too much because it's in the ground, so it does pretty well on its own. Love to use it. Oh, look at this little frog. Little frog here on my basil. You almost can't see him. Right there. Hey, little visitor. This basil does great. I trim on it all the time and really don't have a problem with it. And I've learned pretty well how to take care of it. When it starts to go to seed, I'll cut it back. You can see here that this is about to go to seed, so I'll be topping this, and then it'll just grow back, and before it tries to go to seed too much again, I'll trim it back again. And I have enough basil just out of these 2 plants that I'm sharing with a neighbor who's making pesto. I have started a couple of others from seed as well. I think I have 4 other plants that I started from seed that I'm gonna start growing in smaller terracotta pots, these pots over here, and just see how they do. Again, I like to try to grow things from both that are both in the ground and in these painted and terracotta pots, just to learn the different ins and outs to how they grow. Do they grow well in terracotta pots in this heat and I don't have to worry about it? I can stash that away in my book of knowledge and use that in the future, or do they do best in the ground? I have some pepper plants in here that are just volunteers. This one just came up in my compost pile. I have several of them. This one as well just came up in the compost pile, and we'll see if it actually puts out any peppers. This is the best one here. I'm not sure if I'll get anything out of them, but they were there, so I'm gonna plant them. I've got some oregano here that I propagated. This was just a little extra that I had, and it's growing pretty well. It's taken a lot of work being in this little bitty terracotta pot here, but I've kept it alive. It's been a good learning experience. Oregano is so hardy, but being such a small pot and being terracotta, I've learned again a lot from growing it. Some more rosemary, also doing really well. And this is some parsley that I'm growing in a terracotta pot. Need to trim on it a little bit, but it's doing really well as well. It's a lot of wells in one sentence. My oregano's just going to town here. It really likes this terracotta pot. It's big, it holds a good bit of water. In this really high heat, it kind of shrinks up. What you'll see is these leaves kind of pull together instead of being flattened out when it's super hot, but it does well. Nice and lush. And then I have some wonderful dill. I just love this dill in bloom. Really pretty. Really nice. And I planted it from seed. It's not an heirloom, and it's supposed to bolt slowly, but it's only been about 2 months since it sprouted, so it doesn't really bolt that slowly in the extreme heat that we have here. And you can see that I planted it a little bit shallow here, so in the wind, this one, as it got taller, is kind of falling over a little bit, but It's doing really well. I have plenty of dill. And I planted another dill here in a pot, and you can see how much shorter this is. You know, this isn't nearly as tall as the other dill, though it has been easier to deal with in the heat. It did bolt quickly, and it didn't produce nearly as much dill fronds, but it was just easier to deal with. I mean, it was pretty easy to deal with, but just didn't grow nearly as well as when it was in ground. And this is another bachelor button with the blue flowers. I think it's going to flower right here. Looks like I can get that in focus. There we go. I think that's where it's gonna finally bloom. I hope. I grew it from seed. I grew all this from seed except for the mint and the oregano. I propagated those. And the peppers, which grew out of the compost bin. This is a black-eyed Susan. The dill's kind of fallen over into it, but it's doing great. It's probably the best one that I have in this pot. I have 4 planted in the ground as well, but this one's doing the best as far as size goes. I've got some rosemary. I forgot about my rosemary that I propagated as well. Last time when I tried to propagate rosemary, I didn't use any root stimulator, and this time I did, and it's made all the difference in the world, as well as I didn't use the very tip tops of the new growth to propagate from. I used some woody stuff down below in the last attempt, and it didn't do so well. It just wasn't enough new growth to really take off. But I have 4 here that I have propagated since, this one being the best one. You can see. There we go. This one's doing really well. Oh look, here's another frog. I got a whole family of frogs living on my basil. Isn't that cool? Down here, he's leaping around. I've got another one down here somewhere. There he is. Hey there, little frog. Eat up those bugs. Oh, there's another one down here too. Kind of down in the middle down in here. I don't know if I can get him. Oh yeah, there he is. Very cool. I've got another pepper plant here. This one I'm doing in a little terracotta pot. It's stunted, but it's growing. Again, just an experiment. See how things do in pots versus in the ground. My zinnia is doing well, but it's hard to deal with this one. It wants water, and being in this pot, even though it's painted during the day, you can see had a little bit of uneven watering and then a bit too much watering, and the leaves have started to die at the bottom. I know that's kind of natural on zinnia, but I would prefer that it didn't, and I think I could deal with the zinnia in a slightly different way that would prevent its leaves from having died off like that. another black-eyed Susan over here, and I've got one over there as well, and then I've got one down at the end underneath the dill that you can't really see. It's too small over here, I don't need to show it to you, but once that dill gets out of there, it'll start to take off as well. So I have about 4 black-eyed Susans, 3 of the Bachelor Button, 1 of the Zinnia, and 1 of the Cosmos as my flowers. Another Bachelor Button here. This one also in a small pot, but didn't do nearly as well as the other one on the other side that's flowering already. So not sure why this one's stunted. I'll probably transplant this one into the ground and see how it does, since I don't have one of these in the ground yet. Maybe overwatering or something. Ready? Let's go. So that's it for this one. Just a little short video to show you how things are going in the garden in the month of July. In the heat of the summer, we're going to have a couple more months of 100-degree temperatures and a lot of dry days, but this is kind of representative of what we're up against in region 9A. Like kind of some extreme heat, rain that's irregular, if at all, some months. I don't know that we'll go without a month with no rain this year. I think typically we have at least 1 month, if not more, with no rain. At least I've experienced that. If you're a new subscriber, thank you so much for joining us. If you're not, I hope that you'll consider clicking the subscribe button, give this video a like, leave me a comment. This channel is really all about entertaining you, connecting with you as a homesteading community, and sharing our journey to a more self-sustaining, self-sufficient life. So we'll see how this goes, but in the meantime, don't forget, happiness is the new wealth.